Well, hello everyone, and welcome. It is a pleasure to have you here. I believe that, like everybody else, I am working from home. Um, so it's a pleasure to have you here. We are going to wait a couple of minutes before we start, so we can allow people to join in. And while we wait, I'm going to share some practical information with you. If you're using the platform, this platform is better used if you have Google Chrome. So if you have it, it is strongly recommended that you keep on Google Chrome. We have also muted everyone just to ensure a disturbance-free session. But you're very welcome to use the chat. I see many of you already using it, so it's nice to see that. And also, if you have questions, feel free to use the question tab, which is right beside the chat. So all questions can go on the question tab and chat is open, right? If you have any trouble with technology, please mention on the chat. We do have our technical experts here. Our team is here. So feel free to shout on the chat should you face any tech problems. Okay. We also have a poll tab where we've gonna get some questions there for you to answer. So that would be very helpful if you can use those. And this is the third webinar that we're doing this week. And everyone asked us before if we were recording this session, and yes. So once we finish, you're going to receive an email with a recording of this webinar, okay? I think that's it. I'm just going to give another minute or so before we start to have everyone there. I see that numbers are still going up for the attendance, so let's allow people to join. And I'll start in 1 minute. Well, like everybody else, I'm working from home. So if my dog barks or if there are any weird sounds, I think that has become our new normal, right? So soon we will start. Thank you. Well, I will start now. I see we have stabilized number of people. So for those of you who have entered soon, thanks very much for being here. Let's start. Our objective today is to share with you some of our insights on the effects of COVID-19 on international education. And we have surveyed the demand side. So what we'll cover today is different from the past webinars that we have presented this week. So today we'll be talking about Latin America and recruitment in Latin America. We have surveyed our database of educational agents in the Latin American region. And we will share with you not only the insights about COVID, but also the results of the survey. Before I move forward, I want to introduce myself. My name is Santuza Bicalho. I am Brazilian, based in São Paulo. As you can see, although São Paulo is in a tropical area, it's not very tropical here today. You see that I have clothes on because it's very cold. And it's a pleasure to have you here. I am here on advisory council capacity. I've been an advisor for BONARD since last year, although my relationship with BONARD dates back for many years ago, as being a customer for BONARD when I was with other companies. So it's a pleasure to have you here. Let me tell you about BONARD. We are a market research and market strategy consultancy firm. We are based in Vienna, Austria, with offices all across Europe, China, and correspondents in Latin America, Australia, Russia, and North America. We are members of the United Nations World Tourism Organization and ESOMAR, as we are also experts in research and strategy. Here I'm sharing with you the type of companies and institutions that we serve. We basically serve governments, destinations, sector federations and sector associations, and we also serve educators, agents, and investors whose focus is geared towards education and international education. We've been in the market previously named as student marketing, and we rebranded for BONARD as of last year. So it's as of 2018. So it's a pleasure to have you here. Let me give you an overview of what we will cover today. Basically, we're going to share some market update with key trends based on the COVID situation. Then we will share the Latam agency service survey results, some of our recommendations, and then we will open the floor for questions and answers. I ask that if you have any question, feel free to add your question on the question tab. And to make it easier for us to answer, you're going to see that on the right-hand side of each of the slides, we have a number on top. So please let us know which slide you're talking to, so it will be easier for us to answer your question, okay? My objective here is to use 40 to 45 minutes to cover the content, and I'll give you 15 minutes for questions and answers. At the end of this presentation, I will also share our contact details, and you're very welcome to contact us for further information. Before I jump into the results, allow me to share our methodology. So BONARD has a very extensive database in-house with information on agents. So that was basically formed organically since 2011, and we've been screening and updating our database very constantly, right? When we prepared this research, it was basically focused on the demand side. So we sent a survey for the agents. The data collection happened not very far away. So we ran the data collection between the 13th and the 25th of May this year. We've sent out over 1,100 survey invites, and we had the reply from 68 agencies from 8 countries in Latin America. We also engaged with stakeholders through local presence. So we have contacted some of the agents who participated and asked to be contacted to give us more insights that we will share with you. On top of that, after we have collected the data, we have also ran a desktop research, and we have checked with reliable resources like Euromonitor to go and check the data that we have collected to see how consistent the data was. So basically today we'll be sharing the combination of the desktop research and the survey research. Okay, great. So let me jump to the key trends. We see that the COVID-19, it didn't discriminate because the pandemic is basically impacting both supply and demand. So for the first time, we are seeing agents and providers being affected worldwide. When we look at the recovery, we see that people are talking about of at least 3 years for the mobility demand to be recovered to the pre-crisis levels. We will share more insights with you about that. We are, as education, international education is very reliant on mobility. We understand that the travel and tourism forecasts will be impacting international education as well. We see that April has brought companies hitting the bottom. So 80 to 100% decline were reported across stakeholders in the industry. And the hope is that Q2 will be when the travel industry will bottom out. So that's where we are right now. A lot of the trends that we have seen here is that the brands across the globe are now developing a startup mentality. So they're using this time when we are quiet or less active to revisit core missions, product offer, service offer, way to deliver services. And with people that we have discussed, we see that people who are expecting to survive are those who are seated on cash, because cash will be key. And also we see that digital brands will have an upper hand in terms of agility to come back. In terms of contraction, we're seeing that the global GDP will contract 3.2% in 2020. And if you look at the graphics on the right side, we see that Europe is being heavily affected as destination countries like Italy, Germany, United Kingdom are being very affected by COVID. When we look at source countries, we see that Brazil and Russia are being more affected than other countries like South Korea, India, and China. So this is the key trend that we're seeing right now. And we will take you to the results. And after that, we will give you some take-home ideas to develop and move up and develop your plans moving forward from COVID. Let's talk about the agency survey. So with these trends, when we prepared the survey, sent out the questionnaire, and got in touch with our agency database, we got responses from 68 agents from 8 different countries in Latam. Mexico and Brazil have the highest participation. Of course, they are also the largest countries in Latin America. But we had responses from all over, from Chile, from Argentina, Ecuador, Peru, Venezuela, Colombia. And we thank everyone who has participated and shared insights. It was very interesting to discuss the results with the agents themselves. So here we have the current status of the agent's operations. We see that 70% of the agents are partially operating. So they are working, they're somehow opened, they have taken measures to reduce staff, to reduce activities, to reduce some office footprint. So that's 70% of the database. We see also 15% are fully operating. Mostly, that was interesting. We have contacted some of those who are operating, and we see that the ones operating do have strong higher education activity. So they're still doing counseling for students who wish to start their school year in September. They are finalizing documentation, so 15% of the agents are open. We see that 12% are temporarily closed, and 3%, which are stated as other, when we contacted them, they reported that they are kind of hibernating and waiting to see what to do next. From those that were open, we then surveyed the number of offices that are open, temporarily closed, or permanently closed. So we see that from the 68 agents that have participated, they represent 631 offices in total. 69% of those offices were temporarily closed. And then we will share with you later on what is their expectation in terms of coming back to normal life. But we see that 12% of those offices were permanently closed. And open, we have 122 offices that remained open. That's about 19 to 20% are still open and operating. When we looked about the anticipation of measures to be lasting, we see that in general terms, agents are expecting the movement, the activity to come back in the next 3 to 4 months. When we've spoken to those agents, we see that they expect some return that's not recovery, but some return to happen between August and September of 2020. So we see that from now that we are in June, maybe in a couple of months, those agents, they are expecting to return in August and September. And then we see that as we move forward, and when we go through October, November, and end of 2020, we see the movement returning. So that's the expectation, not to recover, but to return the activity, the return of activities. Okay, so here are the measures taken by the demand to deal with the crisis. The interesting points here are that we separated the cut down expenses into different lines. So the first line was the cut down expenses in reducing non-essential costs. And non-essential costs, we basically mean marketing, events, investments, everything that was not discretionary. That was discretionary. So marketing, events, travel, investments, they are on the first line, which is the cut down expenses on operations, and that reports for 71%. We also see, because we were serving the demand side, and the demand side is very reliant on people, we see the impact on HR, with 57% of the agents reporting that they have reduced the working hours for their staff. They have also released some staff, and some have left. But mostly they have reduced the working hours for staff. When we look into offices, and that's the other line in cut down expenses on operation, we see that one of the measures that agents have taken was to close some of the offices. And that reported for 31%. One of the activity that was heavily, one of the measure that was heavily taken during this crisis was the measure related to accounts to pay. As most of the agents are now discussing with their providers the deferred expenses on operations. So accounts to pay now, we see lots of them are planning how to defer those. And only 24% apply for government subsidy, but that's very reliant on how governments from each one of those countries have dealt with the crisis. We see here it's not relevant. Some of the agents, and we've spoken to two, are considering M&A activities and also some activities related to vertical integration with providers. So we see that people are working hard, they are considering their options, they are being careful on how to do it. And this is more or less in line with what we've seen reported on travel and tourism. When we looked on the decline in numbers of bookings, we see that international education is experiencing more or less what the travel industry is also experiencing. We see that 44% of the agents have reported a steep decline that is between 91 and 100% in bookings. When we raised this question, we were referring to the time frame March-May 2020 versus March-May 2019. This is more or less in line with what the travel and tourism sector has reported. And if we add the three last columns of the slide, we see that basically over 70% of the agents, they are experiencing a decrease between 70 to 100%. For those that are operating and they are reporting that the decrease was between 41 and 50%, they are still doing business in higher education, mostly because they're still dealing with the students who have applied in the past and are about to depart or start their programs this September. Okay. So this is another interesting question that we've raised, and it's not yet about the full recovery. It's mostly about how and when the agents anticipate to receive increase again. We see in line with slide 10 or 11, if I'm not wrong, we see that 33% of the agents are expecting to start receiving increase again between August and September. So those are months that we have to be prepared. One of the measures that we've spoken with experts in travel and tourism, some of the measures that they are recommending is that have to be ready for that comeback of the companies, comeback of the increase. So August and September are months expected to receive some movements back. We also see some of the movement coming back, moving towards the end of the year, but less. We see it more concentrated in the months to come. Only 12% are expecting increase more towards the end of 2020 and the beginning of 21. Now, recovery. So different from the past slides when we were talking about movement coming back. This slide is about 100% recovery. One of the takeaways that we got from this industry is that, and this is something good, okay, is that international education is an activity that attracts young people. So young people will return, will be less affected, of course, because COVID impacted more adults and seniors. But the interesting thing is that international education is geared towards younger people. So different from the travel and tourism sector, we are seeing that the recovery is coming between 2021 and 2022, the full recovery. Travel and tourism is expecting to recover only in 2023 or end of 2022. But if you look at this slide, we see that for 2020, 50% of the agents who participated in our survey, they're not expecting any 50% of them are not expecting any recovery this year. 30% are expecting some recovery in 2021, and we see that 2021 is indicating some recovery. But we see the strongest recovery happening on 2022, as you can see on the last graphic on the right-hand side. This is very in line with travel and tourism, but a little bit better, Okay, so here this is another thing that was very counterintuitive as a result for us. And I think this shows a little bit of optimism from the agents, because we asked agents which programs and courses will recover the soonest. The methodology that we have applied here in this question was like a score-based one. So it's not percentage-wise, but it was a score. And to our surprise, and I think this is good news, I think there is some optimism here, is to see the general language courses receive the highest score. So agents in Latin America, they are more optimistic about the recovery of general language courses. And then second place, we see higher education and language for academic purposes. The interesting thing, though, is that higher education, when we spoke with agents that are experts in higher education, they are not reporting such a steep decrease as general language courses. So probably this is because of that. The decrease is not so steep. Also, we feel that because we haven't asked about junior programs, we believe that the general language course, they can be geared towards younger students who will be able to travel probably faster than adults who will be more careful when traveling. But we see this was a very interesting result for us. It was very counterintuitive for us when we saw it. So wow, this is good news. Okay, then we asked the agents about the destinations, how they were seeing the destinations in terms of demand, where they would see demand recovering, or maybe where they would see the demand decreasing post-COVID. So this is post-COVID. We couldn't figure out very clearly the reason why the agents have forecasted such a decrease for France. But one of the hypotheses we have raised is basically because France attracts more adults. And probably this could be one of the reasons, which is more or less the same with Malta, that can also be attracting more adults in holidays. US and South Africa were very affected. So there is a belief that the situation in some of the US and Africa regions is worse, and then people are not expecting those countries to recover that soon. But Germany, Australia, New Zealand, and Canada, those are the destinations that the agents expect to recover post-COVID period. And the hypothesis we have here is also related to the age range of the students who go to those destinations. Maybe they are young. Okay, then we asked the agents about what kind of support they would welcome from their partners in the months to come. When we read this slide, it was very clear to us that the end game here for providers is flexibility. If we go through the 4-5 top responses here, we see that agents are looking for flexibility. So they are either looking for flexible start dates, or they are looking for the waive of cancellation fees, offering deferrals, extending the deadlines for applications, allowing students to switch from online to in-person programs when possible. So we feel that flexibility is the rule. And one thing that caught our attention here is when you look at offering offering sellable programs such as 2021 offers. This is very in line with what we've seen in travel and tourism. Most companies that are on travel and tourism, they are requesting their partners to allow bookings in the year to come and even 2022, as people are planning on their activities for the future. This is a very interesting takeaway, and everyone is now in tourism discussing measures that can help the industry come back, and opening sellable programs for the future is something that providers can do to make it more flexible for agents to book. But again, guys, flexibility will be core for recovery. Okay, so here's the new normal. What's here to stay? This is more of a trend of what type of alternative revenue streams demand and supply can work on moving forward. We see that physical outlets, physical offices will suffer more. Therefore, one of the key trends is to consider online solutions, not only for schools, we've seen the schools doing that, but also for agents. How agents will be able to assist their prospects and their customers online will play an important role. So this is an important takeaway. The other is the live streaming events. So we see a lot of companies now focusing in doing that. Even when spoke with agents and schools about recruitment efforts, live stream events will be key. And that's in line also with travel and tourism. We see lots of events now happening online. Another trend that we see is the domestic activity that can expand. So that means for destinations, for providers, you're going to see maybe more domestic students booking your programs. For those of you based in Canada, US, UK, Australia, New Zealand, look for the domestic students. They will return first. Technology. I've read, I don't know where, but I've read that COVID didn't change digital transformation of the companies. It only accelerated it. So value proposition and technology will be core for retailers, for agents, and of course for providers to have their value there. So it's something that has been accelerated. We also see that with technology, adopters will move faster than laggards. And this is something interesting because maybe the recovery will come from the youngest customers, not the laggards. This is important for you to plan your recovery. So think about how you're going to use technology, how you're going to connect with your youngest clientele. They may be the first one to appear and to recover. It will be very important for companies to innovate on the short, medium term, and also to have the agility to reach out to customers through communication. Cost will be key. People will be much more concerned with their discretionary spending. So this is something to consider moving forward. Long-term strategies will combine a mixture of premium quality and well-communicated value for money approach. I think people will think twice before investing on something. They will look for quality and they will look for the value for the value of their money. We also feel that tech brands that focus on low-cost strategies will benefit more by proving to offer the biggest bang for buck. So these are some of the trends that we are seeing moving forward that may be helpful for you to plan your recovery strategies. Okay, some of our conclusions. Timeline. We've set 3 timeline stages. One, and the first is the crisis, then 6 months on, and then 12 to 18 months on. We are now on crisis, and the COVID-19 will give us waves 1 through 4 for testing, contact tracing. So everything now is crisis. We are at zero travel. And maybe you're going to see some facelifting of the bans that were imposed. The priorities will focus much more on health and social well-being, and the new normal will have a fear factor and social distancing. We are already seeing this when we are looking now at Europe. As Europe returns, restaurants are taking measures to address the social distancing. So we're seeing that happening. 6 months from now, we expect COVID-19 to have some sort of treatment, and we see the travel starting domestically, and that's why we've shared with you the takeaway about domestic students applying first. The priorities will be economy and disposable income. The new normal will focus on health standards and checks. We feel, and this is something interesting for you as you plan, that safety protocols for schools will be crucial to support agents' activities. People will want to understand the health standards that schools will adopt when returning to operations. And then it is expected that 12 to 18 months from now on, there will be a vaccine. We start to see the interregional travel pick up again, international travel pick up again. The priorities will be geared towards sustainability and capacity building. I think that's when we will all be placing our bets to full recovery. And the new normal will experience airlines operating on their 50 to 70% capacity load. Hotels will come back. Then we will see students coming back to schools. And one of the discussions here will be a lot about the costs, because there is some indication that costs will go up. Conclusions. We see that COVID-19 will leave a lasting scar on travel, and international education relies on travel. It's a highly social experience as the students interact with providers and indirect service providers along the supply chain. So it will leave us a scar. Challenge is implementing new norms, the social distance and protocols. I think schools will need to work on their protocols, safety protocols. And of course, the crisis has accelerated some of the existing trends, such as digitalization, automation, robotics. We feel that the restrictions in place are likely to be lifted for young people. So this is good news for us. Young people, they will be able to return to education as early as deemed safe. So, and we see a greater desire to travel from the younger generation. So this is good news to us who are on the international education. Digital brands likely to benefit from the boost of younger travelers. And one other trend that we're seeing, and then we see people discussing, is the merge with competitors to secure survival. Not only the merge with competitors, but also we have discussed with some of our customers possibilities of vertical integration. So these are some of the measures that we're seeing. Digital transformation towards more sustainable product that works for people. I think we've seen the schools adjusting to that. And we see that COVID has accelerated this digital transformation across the board. Possible mini destinations boom, as we have mentioned before. We see that domestic will play an important role. And we see that the recovery will take place in steps. First domestic, then intra, then international. Okay, before I jump to questions and answers, I wanted to share with you how we as BONARD, how we can help your organization move forward. Here are some of the solutions and services that we offer. We offer market intelligence, market research, strategic advisory, trade missions, and familiarization and press tours. These, of course, we are expecting this to start up again by the end of this year. We are also working with some brands in recruitment strategy by doing online events. So we're doing some online introductions, some online events, digital marketing, and local sales representation. So these are some of the solutions that we can offer. Just to give you some example here, I'm going to share 2 slides on what we've done in digital marketing. Because we are very experienced and we fully understand the nuances of the source markets, we've been running digital marketing campaigns for the last 10 years, serving destinations, sector association, and some institutions. And we can help you with both pay-per-click performance marketing in Western countries in non-Western countries, as we've gathered with our office in China, quite relevant experience in developing those in China, Russia, and Japan. We are also able to support you with media placement through PR articles and interviews. So this is some of the capacity that we are able to deploy currently on top of the others. Just very fast before I move to questions and answers. This is one example of a specific campaign that we have recently run for a destination, focusing source markets like Brazil, Japan, and Vietnam. And the results we were able to gather throughout 3 months of work was an impact of 9 million viewers, over 100,000 clicks, over 50,000 Facebook interactions, and over 200 downloads of our customer brochure. So we do that by preparing, translating documents, understanding the local languages, understanding the local platforms, setting up the campaign, developing keywords, um, also looking at the website optimization, and then running the campaign and impacting. This is just an example for you to understand of what type of services we are able to perform. Okay, so thanks very much for listening. I will now go to the questions. The first question I have here is the following. In your research, trends, and survey with agents, did environmental sustainability of the international education sector and its ecological footprint come up at all? Do you see that having an impact on future mobility and recruitment trends? Caroline, thanks very much for that. We haven't asked about environmental sustainability because at that moment we're very focused in doing something more geared towards COVID. But this is a very good topic that yes, and we can research that. Then I have a question from Nathan. In terms of slide 14, did they give reasons as to why that was the timeline they expected movement to be coming back? Well, Nathan, that's a very good question. And yes, we interacted with those agents country by country. And mostly it was based on their government's trends and forecasts. So it seems that some of those markets were expecting the government on those markets, they were expecting that return for August and September. So it's very based on their government responses and the actual retail atmosphere where they were trading. So let me see the next one. Which is the country in Latam to launch first with new recruitment strategy? Well, Javier, I don't know if I got your question correctly, but we haven't focused on let's say, on an order of countries in terms of new recruitment strategy. But we feel, in general terms, that every country is expecting to recover or to start recovering, in general terms, by August and September. And that will be impacted by the seasonality of how they come back. So, and of course, the seasonality of products. So if we think about juniors, as we mentioned, that younger people could come back faster. The junior market, maybe it's gone for this summer, but it will probably be one of the first to come back for next year. And then for providers, you have to consider what you do for your upcoming summer. On the key trends, Carmela asked, can you please clarify why Canada was not listed? It was not listed because it was an open question. And then we were expecting, we left it open and they haven't replied. So probably it's because of that. And I understand you're probably asking the GDP. So it's yeah. On the GDP, it was the source. I'm just checking here. The source was Euromonitor. Euromonitor hasn't. Yeah, it was Euromonitor. Euromonitor hasn't raised Canada there. So probably it's because of that. So I have another question here. have you found any trends on potential length on travel for young students? That's a very interesting question. Um, we haven't searched for a specific length of travel for young students, no. But this is something that we can dig further. Now that we already have the first wave, this is something that we can dig further. Then I have another question here from Natalia. Do you think B2C sales to be a positive strategy or a threat when focusing on the Latam market at this moment in post-COVID? Natalia, this is a very good question. It depends mostly on your strategy. B2C is very intensive. It's different from B2B because you have to be in the market if you want to develop a very good B2C strategy. I see it positive. I can also share with you that I'm finishing my Master's of Science, and I am researching omni-channel strategy. And then on omni-channel strategy, across the board, we see that brands are investing in every and each channel. So understanding the channels will be key to any company. But then you have to figure out the costs associated with the strategy and the costs associated with the channel. Because maybe if you are a B2B business and you're reliant on agents, you have the cost of sales that might seem high, but being in the market is even higher. So you have to consider what your resources and how you can invest those. I can give you more on that if you want. Have another question here from Roberto. Do you think there will be any change in terms of students' preferred destination because of COVID? Well, Roberto, I think yes. And it's interesting. Let me go back to slide. To go back to slide 17, we see some of the agents. Yeah, some of the agents, they're expecting US, South Africa, and Malta to have to be more affected. UK, it's expected, but not so heavily. It's only less 1.2. But we see an increase, a better expectation for Australia, New Zealand, and Canada. So probably with this in mind, maybe this is something that we can even explore later in the year and see what's going to happen next. But yes. Let me see if. Then I have another question from Carmela. PSE market, post-secondary education market, I assume. Are agents sympathetic to higher education institutions have also taken a huge financial hit? Carmela, that's a very good question. You know, before I jumped on this call, I was still talking to a couple of agents who are on undergraduate, graduate, and degree-seeking programs. We see, and from what I have experienced by talking to them, was that they were less affected than the agents that are more reliant on travel, those who are selling shorter programs and those who are selling to adults. So probably the answer for you is that they haven't taken a huge financial hit. However, there is a discussion about the cost of education, because if you look into the last 40 years in the United States, education has increased tuition prices in 1,400% over the last 40 years. So I think there will be a big discussion on price, and that can affect financially the institutions or the agents. Okay, how do the prospective students in Latam feel working with sub-agents and online platforms? We have extensive recruitment from India, And the unregulated sub-agent recruitment is changing international education to edu-trafficking to enroll low-profile students by manipulating academic docs. That's a good question. Latin American families, they tend to choose an agency based on a very close relationship of confidence. So trust plays an important role here for the booking process. So what I can tell you, Gautam, is that in my experience, and that's not based on the research, okay, that's more based on my 25 years of experience in this industry in Latin America. I'm not experienced at all in geographies like India or China. I can tell you that families, they look for a trust equation here. They are very focused in looking for an agency that will provide them with trust. So, but the online platforms, though, they are very instrumental for that. So if you can combine a good agency that has access to technology to speed up the process, that can be the sweet spot. That's my own experience. And I think this is I believe will be crucial for agents to survive, because without technology it will be very difficult for them to scale up their recruitment, but still trust will be key. Manipulating academic docs from this region here, I've never heard about that. I've heard about that in China, yes, when I have worked for an educational institution back in 2014. I heard a lot about that in other geographies, but not in Latin America, basically because the students who are applying in Latin America, um, they come from the private sector. They more or less have solid records and they know that they can apply. So I don't see that manipulation happening in this geography. Okay, I'm going to get another question, and then as we are nearing the end of the session, I'll get a question from Pamela. How will self-isolation requirements affect international student travel? How will that be marketed? Pamela, I think this is a very good question. And to answer your question, I will come to the trends that we are seeing. We're seeing that COVID-19 has impacted more the senior generation rather than the younger generation. So there is a perception across the board, especially in travel, as I've spoken to some travel specialists, that the domestic and the young will be the ones to recover. So that's a very general expectation from travel. Most of the companies trading on senior and corporate, they are more concerned. But I think that it will be key for providers to well communicate their health protocols as business come back to business as usual. So I feel that this is the communicating the health protocol will be key for return. Last question. Have you heard if any school district in Canada or the US will be offering a remote option for students in September so they can remain in their home country? That's very interesting because, yes, we've heard that. And what I can tell you, Dean, from a source market, that's the discussion happening now within families. So families are discussing if they should send the kids in September, or if they want to pay the school year right now, if it's going to happen online. So it's not decided yet, but there is still lots of discussions going around this question, and we haven't seen a definite answer to that. It's very unclear. And my general feeling, and now this is my opinion, I feel that providers overall are waiting for the first to jump so they can follow and adjust their strategies. I have a very good friend who has a large agency doing higher education placements, and he was telling me that he's seeing all the Ivy Leagues discussing this return to normal, and they feel that the Ivy Leagues will go to their waiting lists because people will postpone their start dates. But the key question is not about this year, is what's going to happen next year when they will be getting the students who have postponed. And it will be much more difficult to enter one college next year than this year because of that. So I feel that's a lot, still, there is a lot of uncertainty surrounding international education. And it is a time for us to pay attention, and it is a time for us to look at trends and think about how we can adjust moving forward. Well, guys, I see we've reached our time. I wanted to share, this is my contact details. I also would like to thank Stefan Koliber, our head of marketing. I also want to thank Patrick, our head of research, and the teams who have put together this research. Thanks very much. You're very welcome to communicate on email with me, with Stefan, with any one of us at BONARD. And it's been a pleasure being here with you. Thanks very much, and I hope to see you soon in another opportunity. Bye-bye.